Captain Jake Morrison stared at the warning lights flashing red across his control panel. The UCS Valiant shook violently as it flew through space near the planet Kepler 442b. Something was very wrong. The ship's engines made terrible grinding, sounds that no pilot ever wanted to hear. "Captain, we're losing power fast," called out Lisa Parker from her communications station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, trying to send a message to the main fleet. "The gravitational field around this planet is much stronger than our scanners showed. It's pulling us in." Jake gripped his chair as the ship tilted sideways. He had been flying ships for 12 years, but he had never felt forces this strong before. The planet below looked brown and ugly, with thick clouds that hid most of the surface. No one was supposed to be living there. That was why they had come to check it out. "Tony, can you get the engines back online?" Jake shouted over the noise to engineer Tony Rodriguez, who was working frantically at his station. "I'm trying, Captain. But the main power core is failing. Whatever hit us damaged too many systems." Tony's voice was tight with worry. "We need to find a place to land, and we need to find it fast." Dr. Helen Brooks, the ship's medical officer, was already gathering emergency supplies. She had been through crashes before during the war with the Zephyrians. She knew what came next. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Maybe 5 minutes before we lose all control," Jake replied. He was already looking for the best place to bring the ship down. The planet's surface was mostly rocky wasteland with some areas that might be soft enough to survive a crash landing. Pilot Sam Bennett was checking the life support systems. His face went pale as he read the numbers. "Captain, we have another problem. The biomasks are damaged. We're going to have trouble breathing down there." Jake felt his stomach drop. The biomasks were the most important piece of equipment they had. The air on most planets would kill a human in minutes without them. They filtered out the poison gases and gave them clean air to breathe. Without working biomasks, they would die even if they survived the crash. "How many masks are still working?" Jake asked. "Only 5 out of 12, Sam said quietly, "and they're all damaged. We might get 6 hours of air if we're lucky." The ship continued to fall toward the planet. Jake could see the ground getting closer through the main window. He picked a flat area between 2 large rocks and aimed for it. "Everyone hold on. This is going to be rough." The UCS Valiant hit the ground hard. The impact threw everyone forward in their seats. Metal screamed as it bent and broke. Sparks flew from broken electrical systems. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on dim and flickering. Jake's head was spinning, but he was alive. He looked around and saw that Lisa was holding her arm, which was bleeding. Tony was unconscious but breathing. Dr. Brooks was already moving to help him. Sam was trying to restart the emergency power systems. "Sound off," Jake called out. "Who's still with us?" "I'm okay," Lisa said, though her voice was shaky. "My arm hurts, but I can move it." "Tony's got a head injury, but he's breathing normally," Dr. Brooks reported as she checked him over. "He should wake up soon." "Emergency power is working," Sam said, "but we lost the main beacon. No one knows where we are." Jake tried to stand up and felt pain shoot through his left leg. He looked down and saw that his pants were torn and bloody. "Dr. Brooks, when you're done with Tony, can you look at this?" "Of course, Captain." As Dr. Brooks worked on his leg, Jake thought about their situation. They were stranded on a hostile planet with limited air and no way to call for help. The war with the Zephyrians had been going on for 3 years, and this planet was right in the middle of the contested zone. If any Zephyrian ships found them, they would be killed or captured. Tony woke up a few minutes later, holding his head and groaning. "What happened? Did we crash?" "We're on the surface of Kepler 442b, Jake explained. "The ship is badly damaged and we have limited air. We need to figure out how to get rescued." Sam was looking at the broken communication equipment. "I might be able to fix the beacon, but I need parts from outside the ship. Some of the external systems might still be working." "Is it safe to go outside?" Lisa asked. Dr. Brooks checked her scanner. "The air is poison, but our biomasks should protect us for a while." We need to be careful not to waste the filters. Jake made a decision. Tony, you and Sam work on the beacon. Lisa, see if you can pick up any radio signals. Dr. Brooks, keep monitoring our air supply. I'm going to check the area around the ship. He put on his damaged biomask and stepped outside. The air felt thick and hot, even through the filter. The sky was an ugly yellow color, and the ground was covered with sharp rocks. The ship had carved a long trench in the dirt when it crashed. Jake walked around the wreckage, looking for anything useful. The ship was broken beyond repair, but some of the external equipment might still work. He was checking a damaged antenna. When he saw something that made him stop. About 100 meters away, there was another crash site. It was much smaller than his ship, but he could see metal debris scattered around a small crater. It looked like a fighter craft, and from the design he could tell it was not human. Jake's heart started beating faster. It was a Zephyrian ship. The enemy had been here too, and recently. He looked around carefully, checking for any signs of life. The fighter was badly damaged, but it might have useful parts. He walked closer, keeping his hand on his weapon. The Zephyrians were dangerous fighters, and he did not want to be surprised. As he got nearer to the wreckage, he could see that the pilot section was partially buried under a piece of broken metal. Then he heard something that made him freeze. It was a sound like heavy breathing, but not human. Something was alive in that wreckage. Jake moved carefully around the debris until he could see into the pilot section. What he saw there changed everything. A Zephyrian warrior was trapped under a heavy piece of metal. The alien was about the size of a human, but with gray skin and 4 arms. Its breathing equipment was completely destroyed, and it was struggling to breathe the poisonous air. The warrior saw Jake and tried to reach for a weapon, but it was too weak. Its breathing was getting worse, and Jake could see that it was dying. The alien's eyes were filled with pain and fear. Jake stood there for a long moment, thinking this was his enemy. The Zephyrians had been fighting humans for 3 years. They had destroyed human colonies and killed thousands of people. Every military training session had taught him that Zephyrians were dangerous and could not be trusted. But as he looked at the dying warrior, Jake saw something else. He saw a living being that was suffering and afraid. He saw someone who was far from home, just like he was. Someone who was fighting for his people, just like Jake was fighting for his. The warrior's breathing became more labored. It would be dead in minutes without help. Jake had to make a choice, and he had to make it now. He could walk away and let the alien die, or he could try to help. Jake thought about his limited air supply. He thought about his crew depending on him. He thought about the war and everything he had been taught about the enemy. Then he looked at the dying warrior again and made his choice. Jake Morrison took a deep breath through his biomask and walked closer to the trapped Zephyrian warrior. The alien's 4 arms moved weakly as it tried to push away the heavy metal piece that had it pinned down. Its gray skin was turning a darker color, which Jake guessed meant it was not getting enough air. The warrior saw Jake approaching and made a sound that was part growl, part wheeze. One of its hands reached for what looked like a weapon, but the movement was too slow and weak. Jake could see the alien's chest rising and falling rapidly as it struggled to breathe the poisonous air. Jake stopped about 3 meters away and slowly raised his hands to show he was not going to attack. The warrior's large yellow eyes watched him carefully. Jake had never been this close to a living Zephyrian before. In battle, you usually saw them at a distance through weapon sights or on scanner screens. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake said. Even though he knew the alien probably could not understand English, he kept his voice calm and gentle. "I want to help." The warrior made another sound, this one more confused than angry. It was clearly surprised that a human was talking to it instead of shooting. Jake had learned a few words of the Zephyrian language during his military training, but he was not sure if he remembered them correctly. "Friend," Jake said in what he hoped was Zephyrian. The word came out wrong, but the warrior seemed to understand what he was trying to say. Its eyes went wide with surprise. Jake moved closer and knelt down beside the trapped alien. Up close, he could see that the warrior was badly hurt. There was dark blue liquid that must be blood coming from cuts on its arms and head. The piece of metal across its chest was too heavy for Jake to lift alone. The warrior tried to speak, but only managed to make gasping sounds. Jake could see that its breathing was getting worse every minute. Without help, it would be dead soon. Jake made his decision. He took off his biomask and held it out toward the alien warrior. The poisonous air hit his lungs immediately, making him cough and feel dizzy. But he pressed the mask against the warrior's face, covering what looked like breathing holes. The effect was immediate. The warrior's rapid breathing slowed down, and some color returned to its gray skin. Its yellow eyes looked at Jake with complete shock. In all the years of war, no human had ever helped a Zephyrian like this. Jake could only hold his breath for so long. After about 30 seconds, he had to put the mask back on his own face to breathe. The warrior watched him take several deep breaths, then Jake offered the mask again. They continued like this for several minutes, taking turns breathing through the biomask. Jake was starting to feel weak from the poison air, but he could see that the warrior was getting stronger. It tried to say something in its own language, but Jake could not understand the words. "Jake, where are you?" Lisa's voice came through his radio. "We're worried about you." Jake pressed the button on his radio. "I'm okay. I found something. I need help moving some heavy debris." "On our way," Lisa replied. Jake looked at the warrior and pointed to himself. "Jake," he said clearly. Then he pointed to the alien and raised his eyebrows in a question. The warrior seemed to understand. It made a sound that was like Vexstar. Jake tried to repeat it, and the warrior made what might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with an alien face, but Jake thought it looked friendly. A few minutes later, Lisa, Tony, and Sam arrived. They all stopped short when they saw Jake sharing his air with the enemy warrior. Lisa immediately raised her weapon. "Captain, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "That's a Zephyrian soldier." "I can see that," Jake replied, still kneeling beside Vexstar. "It's hurt and trapped. We need to get this metal off it." "Are you crazy?" Tony said. "The thing will kill us the moment it gets free." Jake looked at his crew. He understood their fear and anger. The war had been hard on everyone. They had all lost friends to Zephyrian attacks. But looking at Vexstar, Jake saw something different than what the war propaganda had taught them. "Look at it," Jake said quietly. "It's hurt and scared, just like we would be. It's trying to survive, just like us." Sam was staring at the alien warrior. "Captain, we barely have enough air for ourselves. If you keep sharing your mask, you'll die." "Maybe," Jake said. "But if we don't help, it will definitely die." Dr. Brooks had been quiet, but now she stepped forward. "Let me examine it," she said. "I'm a doctor. I took an oath to help anyone who is hurt." Lisa was still pointing her weapon at Vexstar. "This is insane. We're at war with these things. They've killed thousands of humans. And we've killed thousands of them," Jake replied. "But right now, we're all just trying to survive on this planet." Dr. Brooks knelt down beside Vexstar and began examining its injuries. The warrior watched her nervously but did not try to stop her. "The injuries are serious but not fatal," she said. "If we can get it free and treat the wounds, it should survive." "Captain," Sam said, "even if we save this alien, what then?" "When our rescue ships come, they'll want to know why we helped the enemy." Jake had been thinking about the same thing. He knew that helping Vexstar could get him in serious trouble with the military. Some officers might even call it treason. But he also knew that he could not just walk away and let another thinking being die. "We'll deal with that when the time comes," Jake said. "Right now, we need to get this metal off it." Tony and Sam looked at each other, then at Jake. They had served with him for 2 years and trusted his judgment. Finally, Tony nodded. "Okay, Captain, but we do this carefully. If it tries to attack us, we defend ourselves." Working together, the 4 humans managed to lift the heavy piece of metal off Vexstar. The warrior immediately tried to sit up, but Dr. Brooks gently pushed it back down. She began cleaning and bandaging its wounds with supplies from her medical kit. Vexstar watched everything with curious eyes. It seemed amazed that humans were helping it instead of leaving it to die. Jake continued to share his biomask with the warrior, even as his own breathing became more labored. "Captain, your oxygen levels are getting dangerous," Dr. Brooks warned. "You need to stop sharing the mask so much." But Jake noticed something. Vexstar was pointing at the wreckage of its fighter craft and saying something in its own language. The warrior was trying to tell them something important. Sam walked over to the alien ship and looked inside. "Captain, there's some kind of technical equipment here. It looks like communication gear, but it's more advanced than ours." Vexstar nodded and tried to sit up again. This time, Dr. Brooks helped it into a sitting position. The warrior pointed at the equipment and then at Sam, making hand gestures that seemed to mean together or work together. "I think it's trying to tell us that we can fix our beacon using parts from both ships," Sam said with excitement. "If that's true, we might be able to call for help." Jake looked at Vexstar, who was nodding eagerly. The warrior was willing to help them, even though they were enemies. Jake realized that his choice to share his air had created something unexpected. It had created trust between enemies. "Can you do it?" Jake asked Sam. "Maybe, but I'll need to understand how their technology works. And I'll need help from someone who knows their systems." All eyes turned to Vexstar. The warrior looked at each human, then at Jake. It said something in its own language, then tried to speak in broken English. "Help, ... help, ... help, me." Jake smiled and offered his biomask to Vexstar again. As the warrior breathed deeply, Jake realized that his choice to share his air had done more than save a life. It had created a partnership that might save all of them, but Jake was getting weaker. The poison air was taking its toll on his body. Dr. Brooks could see that he was in trouble, and she was starting to worry that his generous spirit might kill him before they could find a better solution. Vexstar seemed to understand this too. The warrior struggled to stand up, supported by Tony and Sam. It pointed at its fighter craft and said something that sounded urgent. Jake hoped it had an idea that could help them all survive. Vexstar pointed at his crashed fighter with one of his 4 arms and said something in his language that sounded urgent. Jake tried to understand what the alien warrior was telling them, but the words were too fast and complicated. Jake's head was spinning from lack of oxygen, and he was having trouble thinking clearly. Dr. Brooks put her hand on Jake's shoulder. "Captain, you need to sit down. You're not getting enough air." Jake nodded and sat down on a piece of broken metal. His breathing was shallow and quick. Every time he shared his biomask with Vexstar, he was putting his own life at risk. But he could not bring himself to stop helping the alien warrior. Sam was examining the wreckage of Vexstar's fighter more carefully. "Captain, I think I understand what he's trying to tell us. There's an emergency air system in his ship. It's damaged, but it might still work." Vexstar nodded eagerly when he heard Sam's words. The warrior walked slowly to his ship, still weak from his injuries. He pointed at a small compartment that had been partially crushed in the crash. Inside, Jake could see what looked like breathing equipment. "The problem is," Sam continued, "this system is designed for Zephyrian breathing. The air mixture is different from what humans need. But maybe Dr. Brooks and I can figure out how to modify it." Dr. Brooks joined Sam at the alien ship. She had her medical scanner in her hand and was taking readings from the air system. "This is interesting," she said. "The basic elements are the same as what we breathe, but the proportions are different. With some work, we might be able to make it safe for humans." Vexstar was trying to help them understand his ship's systems. He pointed at different parts and said words in his language. Even though they could not understand his words, his gestures were clear. He was showing them how the air system worked. Tony was working on their own ship's beacon system. "I'm making progress here," he called out. "But I need some components that our ship doesn't have. The power couplers are completely burned out." Vexstar heard Tony's words and walked over to where he was working. The alien warrior looked at the human technology for a moment, then went back to his own ship. He returned carrying what looked like small metal cylinders. "Are those power couplers?" Tony asked with surprise. Vexstar nodded and handed the cylinders to Tony. The human engineer examined them carefully. These are more advanced than our couplers, but I think I can make them work with our systems. This might actually improve our beacon's range. Jake watched all of this through tired eyes. He was amazed at how quickly his crew and the alien warrior were learning to work together. A few hours ago, they had been enemies. Now they were cooperating to save each other's lives. Lisa was still nervous about trusting Vexstar, but she was also monitoring the radio for any signs of rescue ships. "Captain, I'm picking up some faint signals. There are ships moving in this area, but I can't tell if they're human or Zephyrian. Both, probably," Jake said weakly. "This planet is in the middle of the war zone. Any rescue attempt will likely bring ships from both sides." Dr. Brooks and Sam had been working on the air system for over an hour. Finally, Dr. Brooks called out, "I think we have something. The modification is crude, but it should provide breathable air for humans." She had connected tubes and filters between the alien air system and a human breathing mask. The setup looked strange, but when she tested it, clean air flowed through the tubes. "Jake, try this," Dr. Brooks said, handing him the modified breathing apparatus. Jake put the mask over his face and took a deep breath. The air was different from what he was used to, but it was clean and safe. For the first time in hours, he felt like he could breathe normally. "It works," he said with relief. "This is amazing." Vexstar watched Jake breathe easily with the modified system. The alien warrior made a sound that Jake thought might be laughter. It seemed pleased that its technology was helping the humans. Tony had been working steadily on the beacon system using the alien power couplers. "I'm ready to test the beacon," he announced. "If this works, we should be able to send a signal that can reach ships anywhere in this system." "Wait," Lisa said suddenly. "Before we send that signal, we need to think about what happens next. When rescue ships arrive, they're going to find us working with an enemy soldier. How do we explain that?" Jake looked at Vexstar, who was sitting nearby and breathing through Jake's original biomask. The alien warrior had saved their lives by sharing his ship's air system and power couplers. Without his help, they would all be dead in a few hours. "We tell them the truth," Jake said. "We crashed, we found a survivor, and we all worked together to stay alive. The truth might get us all court-martialed," Sam said quietly. "The military doesn't like soldiers who cooperate with the enemy." Vexstar seemed to understand that they were talking about him. He said something in his own language, then tried to speak in English. "I understand danger. For you." Jake was surprised that the alien warrior knew some English. "You can speak our language?" "Little," Vexstar replied. "Learn. In war no enemy words for battle." "Then you understand that helping each other could get us all in trouble." "With our commanders," Jake said. Vexstar nodded slowly. "Yes, but you saved my life, I save yours, this is right thing." Lisa was still monitoring the radio. "Captain, the signals are getting stronger. I think we have ships approaching from 2 different directions. The signal patterns suggest one group is human and the other is Zephyrian." Jake realized that their situation was about to become much more complicated. When the rescue ships arrived, they would likely start fighting each other. The planet's surface would become a battlefield, and the small group of survivors would be caught in the middle. "How long before they get here?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 hours," Lisa replied. "The human ships are coming from the north, and the Zephyrian ships are approaching from the south." Vexstar stood up and walked to a high piece of wreckage where he could see the sky. He pointed at the southern horizon and said something in his language that sounded worried. "What is it?" Jake asked. "War Commander." "Kethril," Vexstar said in broken English. "He not like humans. He will attack first? Ask questions daughter?" Jake understood. The approaching Zephyrian force was commanded by someone who would shoot first and worry about survivors later. Similarly, the human rescue ships would probably attack any Zephyrian vessels they encountered. "We need to get that beacon working fast," Jake said. "Maybe we can contact both sides and explain the situation before they start fighting." Tony activated the beacon system. The modified alien power couplers worked perfectly. and the signal was much stronger than their original beacon could have produced. "It's working," Tony said. "I'm sending a distress signal on both human and Zephyrian frequencies." "What should the message say?" Lisa asked. Jake thought for a moment. "Tell them we have survivors from both sides and that we're working together. Ask them to send negotiators instead of warships." "Do you think they'll listen?" Sam asked. "Probably not," Jake admitted, "but we have to try." Vexstar was still watching the sky. He turned to Jake and said something in his language, then switched to English. "I must return to my people. Tell them about humans. You." Jake realized what the alien warrior was suggesting. "You want to go back to your ship's people and tell them what happened here?" "Yes," Vexstar replied. "Maybe they listen. To me. Maybe. No fighting." It was a dangerous plan. Vexstar would be risking his life by telling his commanders that he had cooperated with humans. But it might be the only way to prevent a battle that would get everyone killed. "If you do this," Jake said, "you might never see your family again. Your people might think you are a traitor." Vexstar looked at Jake with his large yellow eyes. "You. Give me. Your heir, your life. Mine. Now, I give my honor. For peace." Jake felt a deep respect for the alien warrior. Vexstar was willing to sacrifice everything to prevent more killing. It was the kind of courage that Jake had rarely seen, even among human soldiers. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked. Vexstar nodded. "Yes, but need favor. What do you need?" "When my people. Tum for me. You tell them. Truth about working together, about saving lives." Jake extended his hand toward Vexstar. The alien warrior looked at the gesture for a moment, then reached out with one of his forearms and grasped Jake's hand. It was the first time in the war that a human and a Zephyrian had shaken hands in friendship. "I promise," Jake said. "I'll tell them the truth." The first ships to appear in the sky were human. Jake could see 3 dark shapes moving against the yellow clouds. They were coming in fast, which meant they had detected the beacon signal. Lisa was trying to contact them on the radio, but she was not getting any response. "UCS Endeavor, this is Captain Morrison. Do you copy?" Lisa spoke into her radio again and again, but only static came back. Jake watched the ships getting closer and felt his stomach tighten with worry. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded the Endeavor, and she was known for being tough but fair. If anyone would listen to his story, it would be her. But the other ships might belong to commanders who would shoot first and ask questions later. Vexstar was standing beside Jake, also watching the approaching human ships. The alien warrior had been preparing to leave and return to his own people, but now he looked uncertain. "They. Will capture me," he said in his broken English. "I won't let them hurt you," Jake promised. "You saved our lives. I'll make sure they understand that." "Maybe. They not believe you," Vexstar replied. "Humans think all Zephyrians are evil." Jake knew the alien warrior was probably right. The war had made both sides hate each other. Most humans believed that Zephyrians were monsters who enjoyed killing. Most Zephyrians probably thought the same thing about humans. But Jake had learned something different in the past few hours. "We have to try," Jake said. "Maybe if they see us working together, they'll start to understand." The human ships landed about half a kilometer away from the crash site. Jake could see soldiers jumping out and forming battle lines. They were being very careful, which was smart. This planet was in the middle of enemy territory, and they did not know what they might find. "Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Sullivan. Are you there?" The voice came through Lisa's radio clearly. Lisa handed the radio to Jake. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison. We're here and we're alive." "Thank God, Jake. We thought you were all dead. Are you hurt?" "We have some injuries, but we're alive." "Admiral, I need to tell you something important before your people get here." "What is it, Captain?" Jake looked at Vexstar and took a deep breath. "We're not alone down here. We found a Zephyrian survivor, and we've been working together to stay alive." There was a long silence on the radio. When Admiral Sullivan spoke again, her voice was cold and professional. Captain, did you say you have an enemy prisoner? Not a prisoner, Admiral, a survivor. He helped us fix our beacon and our air supply. Without his help, we would all be dead. Jake, are you injured? Did you hit your head in the crash? Jake understood why the Admiral was confused. The idea of humans and Zephyrians working together was almost impossible to believe. I'm fine, Admiral. I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. This warrior saved our lives. Stay where you are, Captain. We're coming to you. Jake put down the radio and looked at his crew. They all seemed nervous about what was going to happen. Even Dr. Brooks, who had been the most willing to help Vexstar, looked worried. Maybe we should hide the alien until we can explain everything, Tony suggested. No, Jake said firmly. We tell the truth from the beginning. If we lie now, they'll never believe us later. Vexstar walked over to Jake and handed him something. It was a small metal object that looked like a badge or medal. For you, the alien warrior said, my people ... They understand ... honor. You show honor ... You keep this. Jake took the object and looked at it carefully. It was warm to the touch and had strange symbols carved into it. What does it mean? It's a warrior who saves enemy. Is greatest warrior, Vexstar explained. You earn this when you give me your air. Jake was touched by the gift, but he was also worried about what Admiral Sullivan would think when she saw it. Having Zephyrian military decorations could be seen as evidence of treason. The human soldiers arrived a few minutes later. They spread out in a defensive formation with their weapons ready. Admiral Sullivan walked in the center of the group, her eyes scanning the crash site carefully. Kate Sullivan was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been fighting the Zephyrians longer than almost anyone in the human fleet. Jake respected her, but he also knew that she had little reason to trust aliens. Jake, it's good to see you alive, Admiral Sullivan said as she approached. Then she saw Vexstar standing beside Jake and her expression changed. Her hand moved toward her weapon. Admiral, please, Jake said quickly. This is Vexstar. He's the one who helped us survive. Admiral Sullivan's soldiers raised their weapons and pointed them at the alien warrior. Vexstar did not try to run or fight. He just stood calmly beside Jake, waiting to see what would happen. Step away from the alien, Captain, Admiral Sullivan ordered. No, Admiral. I won't abandon someone who saved my life. That thing is the enemy, Jake. It's probably been sending information to its fleet this whole time. Jake moved to stand between the soldiers and Vexstar. Admiral, look at our beacon. Look at our air system. This warrior gave us the parts we needed to survive. He could have let us die, but he chose to help us. Dr. Brooks stepped forward. Admiral, I've been treating his injuries. He's been cooperative and peaceful the entire time. He even taught us how to modify his ship's air system so we could breathe. Admiral Sullivan looked at the mixed human and alien technology that was keeping them alive. Jake could see her trying to understand what had happened. This doesn't make sense, she said. Zephyrians don't help humans. They kill humans. Maybe we've been wrong about them, Jake said quietly. Maybe they're not so different from us. Captain Morrison, you've been through a traumatic experience. The crash, the lack of oxygen, the stress. It's possible you're not thinking clearly. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Admiral, with respect, I know what I've experienced. This warrior risked his own life to help us. He gave us technology that could have been used against humans. He did all of this after I shared my air with him when he was dying. Admiral Sullivan looked surprised. You shared your air with an enemy. Soldier, I shared my air with a living being who was in trouble, Jake corrected. And that choice led to all of us surviving. Vexstar stepped forward and spoke directly to Admiral Sullivan. His English was getting better as he practiced. Admiral ... Your soldier ... Jake, he saved my life. I try to save his life. And his people, we work ... together ... or we all die. The Admiral studied Vexstar carefully. Jake could see that she was trying to decide whether the alien was telling the truth. And now what? She asked. What do you want from us? I want ... to go back to my people, Vexstar said. Tell them Humans can be good. Tell them. Maybe we stop fighting. Admiral Sullivan laughed, but it was not a happy sound. You think your commanders will listen to you? You think they'll stop the war because you made friends with some humans? Maybe not, Vexstar admitted. But I must try. Too many die in this war, both sides. Lose too much. Jake could see that Admiral Sullivan was struggling with what to do. She had spent years fighting Zephyrians, and now she was being asked to trust one. It went against everything the military had taught her. Admiral, Jake said, what if we're missing an opportunity here? What if this could be the beginning of peace talks? Or what if it's a trap? Admiral Sullivan replied. What if this alien is playing us for fools? Lisa, who had been quiet during the entire conversation, suddenly spoke up. Admiral, I'm detecting Zephyrian ships approaching from the south. Multiple contacts moving fast. Admiral Sullivan immediately switched into combat mode. How long do we have? Maybe 30 minutes. Lisa replied. All right, people, we need to get out of here now. Load the survivors into the transport ships. Vexstar looked at Jake with sad eyes. Now, They take me prisoner. Maybe, tell me. Jake made a decision that could end his military career. Admiral, I want to make a formal request. I want you to release this warrior so he can return to his people before the battle starts. Absolutely not, Admiral Sullivan said. He's a valuable prisoner. Our intelligence people will want to question him. Then question him here and now, Jake said. Ask him anything you want. But when you're done, let him go. Admiral Sullivan stared at Jake as if he had lost his mind. Captain, you're asking me to release an enemy soldier who could give his people information about our forces. I'm asking you to give peace a chance, Jake replied. This warrior wants to tell his people that humans can be trusted. If we prove him wrong by taking him prisoner, what message does that send? The Admiral looked at Vexstar, then at Jake, then at the approaching Zephyrian ships on the horizon. She had to make a decision, and she had to make it quickly. Admiral Sullivan looked at the approaching Zephyrian ships through her binoculars. They were still far away, but they were moving fast. She had maybe 20 minutes to make a decision that could change everything or get everyone killed. Admiral, Jake said urgently, if we let Vexstar return to his people, he might be able to prevent a battle. But if we take him prisoner, those ships will attack us to try to rescue him. Admiral Sullivan lowered her binoculars and looked at Vexstar. The alien warrior was standing calmly, waiting for her decision. He knew that his life was in her hands. What exactly would you tell your commanders? Admiral Sullivan asked Vexstar directly. Vexstar thought for a moment, trying to find the right English words. I tell them ... humans have honor, I tell them. Captain Jake ... give his heir to save enemy life, I tell them. We work together ... and all survive. And you think they'll believe you? War Commander Kethril knows me ... dong time, I never lie. To him, he know ... I speak truth. Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see her weighing the risks. If she released Vexstar and he was lying, she could be helping the enemy. But if she kept him prisoner, the approaching battle would definitely happen. Jake, Admiral Sullivan said finally, you really believe this alien warrior will keep his word? Yes, Admiral. He's already proven his honor by helping us survive. He could have let us die and taken our ship's parts for himself. Instead, he shared everything he had. Dr. Brooks stepped forward. Admiral, I've been studying both our species during our time here. We're more alike than we thought. We both value courage, loyalty, and protecting our families. Maybe the war started because we didn't understand each other. Admiral Sullivan looked at her watch. The Zephyrian ships were getting closer. All right, she said finally. I'm going to do something that will probably get me court-martialed. Vexstar, I'm going to let you return to your people. But I want something in exchange. What do you want? Vexstar asked. I want you to arrange a meeting. Not a battle, but a meeting. Your war commander and me, with small groups from both sides. We talk before we fight. Vexstar's eyes widened with surprise. You ... Want to talk Thril? If talking can save lives, then yes. Can you arrange this? Vexstar nodded eagerly. Yes, Kethril is good warrior, he listened. If I tell him honor about working together? Admiral Sullivan turned to her radio operator. Send a message to the approaching Zephyrian ships. Tell them we have their missing warrior and we want to arrange a prisoner exchange. Admiral, the radio operator said, we're getting a response. They're agreeing to a meeting, but they want it to happen on the planet's surface, halfway between our positions. Tell them we agree, Admiral Sullivan said. Then she looked at Jake. Captain, you're coming with me to this meeting. You started this whole thing by sharing your air. You need to finish it. Jake felt nervous but also excited. This could be the first real peace talk between humans and Zephyrians since the war started. What about my crew? They'll stay with the ships, ready to evacuate if things go wrong? Vexstar walked over to Jake and handed him something else. It was a small communication device. This translate our languages you speak. It changed. To Zephyrian, Kethril speak it changed to English. Where did you get this? Jake asked. All Zephyrian warriors carry one for talking. To prisoners, but never use for peace talks. An hour later, Jake found himself standing in the middle of the rocky wasteland between the two crash sites. Admiral Sullivan was beside him, along with two other human officers. Across from them, 3 Zephyrian warriors approached. The one in the center was larger than Vexstar, with darker gray skin and more scars. This had to be War Commander Kethril. Vexstar walked between the two groups. He looked nervous but determined. When he reached Kethril, the 2 aliens spoke, quickly in their own language. Jake could not understand the words, but he could see that Vexstar was trying to convince his commander of something important. Kethril listened to Vexstar's story, his yellow eyes growing wider with each word. Finally, he looked at Jake and said something in Zephyrian. The translation device turned his words into English. You are the human who shared his air with my warrior? Yes, Jake replied. The device translated his answer into Zephyrian sounds. Vexstar tells me you nearly died to save his life. Why would you do this for an enemy? Jake thought about his answer carefully. Because when I looked at him, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone who was hurt and scared just like I would be. I saw someone who was far from home, fighting for his people just like I am. Kethril studied Jake for a long moment. In all the years of this war, no human has ever shown mercy to a Zephyrian. We have been taught that your species has no honor. And we've been taught the same thing about your species, Admiral Sullivan said. But maybe we've both been wrong. Vexstar tells me that you worked together to survive. That you shared technology and knowledge. We did, Jake confirmed. We realized that we had a choice. We could help each other live, or we could all die alone. Kethril nodded slowly. This is expected. For 3 years we have fought because we believed humans were monsters. But Vexstar has never lied to me. If he says you have honor, then perhaps we have been mistaken. Admiral Sullivan stepped forward. War Commander, neither of our species wanted this war. It started because of misunderstandings and fear. Maybe it's time to try something different. What do you propose? Kethril asked. A ceasefire. Not surrender, just a stop to the fighting while we talk. We exchange prisoners, we allow rescue operations, we try to find a way to coexist. Kethril looked at Vexstar, who nodded encouragingly. You would trust us to honor such a ceasefire? Your warrior trusted us enough to share his technology and knowledge, Jake said. I think that trust has to start somewhere. The war commander was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I cannot end this war with one conversation, but I can agree to a limited ceasefire, 1 sector of space, for 1 month. We see if trust is possible. Admiral Sullivan smiled. That's a good start. We'll contact our respective fleets and arrange the details. As the meeting ended, Vexstar walked over to Jake one last time. Thank you, he said in English. Your breath gave me life. Now, maybe it give both our peoples new life. Jake shook hands with the alien warrior again. Thank you for showing me that enemies can become friends. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in a large conference room on Space Station Unity. It was the first permanent facility built jointly by humans and Zephyrians. The war was not over, but it had changed. Large parts of space were now covered by ceasefire agreements. Prisoner exchanges happened regularly. Some ships from both sides were working together on rescue missions. Jake was no longer a simple ship captain. He had been promoted to Special Ambassador for Interspecies Relations. His job was to help humans and Zephyrians learn to work together. It was not always easy, but progress was being made. Vexstar was there too, with the same job for his people. The alien warrior had been decorated as a hero by the Zephyrian Empire for his courage in making peace. Together, they were planning new cooperation projects. Do you ever regret sharing your air with me that day? Vexstar asked Jake as they looked out at the stars through the station's large windows. Never, Jake replied. That one breath changed everything. It showed us that caring for others is the strongest force in the universe. Vexstar made the sound that Jake had learned was Zephyrian laughter. Your species has a saying about this, yes? One small action can change the world? Something like that, Jake said, smiling. We usually say that little things can make a big difference. On my world, we say that the greatest warriors are those who choose to save life instead of taking it. Jake nodded. Maybe that's something both our species can agree on. As they watched, a mixed crew of human and Zephyrian engineers floated past the window in spacesuits, working together to build a new section of the station. It was proof that cooperation was possible, even between former enemies. Jake thought about that day on the hostile planet when he had made the choice to share his air with a dying enemy. He had not known it at the time, but that single act of compassion had planted the seeds of peace between two worlds. Sometimes the most important choices were the simplest ones, made by ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. The war was not over, but it was changing. And it had all started with one human soldier who decided that saving a life was more important than following the rules of war. In the end, that choice had saved more lives than any weapon ever could.